Hi there, it's Mark Anthony here at Demolition News. We broadcast a daily live show and we broadcast it over on LinkedIn, on Facebook and on YouTube. And every show ends with a bit of a round robin chat. Now we always cut that chat off before we broadcast the recorded version onto the various social media platforms. But today we're making an exception. Today's chat revolved around the subject of the worsening skill shortage within the UK demolition and construction industry. And the chat contained so much detail, insight and ideas that I wanted to share it. So sit back, grab yourself a cup of coffee and just listen to what some of the people involved in that chat had to say. I think you'll enjoy it. Thanks for watching. I hope it's an overreaction to material shortages and skill shortages. I mean, let's face it, skill shortages are nothing new. The HGV one is a concern, although I think proactive companies like Mick George will certainly help to alleviate part of that. And I'm certainly aware of at least one company up in the northeast, a demolition company, who is offering a £500 bounty to anyone that can actually introduce them to an HGV driver or somebody willing to train to be an HGV driver. So hopefully we can overcome that one as well. It would be a terrible, terrible shame if after the year and a bit that we had with the pandemic, if the growth and the bounce back was scuppered by something as straightforward as a lack of drivers and a lack of materials. And I'm sure, you know, make no bones about it, I voted Remain, and I'm sure that part of this is a Brexit hangover. But regardless of your political leanings and your political beliefs, it would be a crying shame for a much deserved bounce back to be scuppered by something as straightforward as shortages. Yeah, as Peter rightly says, and I know this is a focus for Peter and content and media, skill shortages, they are a serious issue, and annoyingly they have been a serious issue for as long as I can remember. I've been writing about construction for 32, 33 years now, and I don't remember a time when we weren't talking about skill shortages. I think we need to look at the fact that we maybe need a new approach. I have serious question marks about the validity, personal question marks about the validity of the Construction Industry Training Board. But even allowing for that, you've still got to get bums in seats. You've still got to get young people through the door in order to get them enthused and trained. And as an industry, and I will include both demolition and construction in that, we're not doing enough. And it's frustrating. A few years ago, together with my good friend John Woodward at C&D Consultancy, I wrote a couple of books, children's books. My dad does demolition and my dad drives a digger. And I was invited, and I know John's done much more of this than I have, but I was invited to a number of schools to go and read to children, you know, somewhere between 6, 7, 8 years old, read them the book and everything else. And the enthusiasm that I was greeted with, and you know, they were inquisitive, they wanted to know more, predominantly about diggers. It wasn't just the boys, it was the girls as well. You know, they were really, really enthused. We need more of that, and I don't think one off is enough. You know, showing a kid a digger at 6 or 7 years old, they're not going to remember that when they turn 15, 16 and they start to make career choices. This needs to be reinforced right the way through their educational career, and as an industry I don't think we're doing enough of that. A skills show once a year at the NEC is fine, but it's too late because the sort of people that are attending that are already school leavers and they've already started to make up their mind. And unfortunately, when you go to that skills show, you know, we've got the likes of the demolition and the construction industry, including some absolutely fantastic construction companies and plant hirers, but we're competing with Google and Apple and Amazon and companies that just have a much wider and much sexier appeal than construction and demolition currently has. It's something that needs to be addressed. I could waffle on about this for hours, and I probably will at some point. Just one very quick point. Given the take up that we had a good few hundred people watching our Instagram No Agenda show yesterday, and I am seriously considering doing what I will loosely call a hangout show, where I basically just set the camera running and just sit here with a cup of coffee and see what people have got to say for themselves, just to see basically what everyone's got to say. It's all very well, I broadcast and I talk about what's going on. I'd like to hear your feedback. I get a lot of good feedback from the likes of Peter and from Nigel and Neil Edwards and Ken and Nick and all the people that regularly show up at this show. But we want it from the horse's mouth. We are overly reliant, I think, on press releases and press statements and survey results and that kind of thing. I'd love to be able to open up the channel for the word on the street, if you like. Not entirely sure. I don't have the technology to allow me to take a phone in, so it would all be text-based, much as the chat is today. But I do think there is some value in that, and maybe that's something I'll look at when I've got a quiet period, assuming I ever get a quiet period again. Leanne Bird, take your glasses off. Leanne, that's why I wear the glasses, because I look like a road crash behind the glasses. So they're going back on, but thanks for the comment anyway. They also cover up the fact that I'm looking at various monitors and various bits of script and notes and stuff. So they are here for a reason, not just to make me look like a pillock. I think that will probably do us for today. I do appreciate you all being here. As always, all the founder members of the Demolition crew are in full effect, and I will leave you with one final thought. I won't expect you to do it down the phone line, but it is Ken Hatch's birthday today, so I would like you to all quietly contemplate wishing him a happy birthday, and giving him your best regards. Just about to press the button, and in rolls Des Lynch, and I think you're right, Des. You're absolutely right, but I think the point there. You're right, they do want to be famous and they want to be rich. They want the lifestyles of the rich and the famous, and all of that I think is absolutely valid. But I also think we miss the point within demolition and construction about the fact that not everybody that's employed within this sector spends their time on a wet site in November. That's not true. You think about the people that are doing things like, off the top of my head, like 3D animations, and design and that kind of thing. They're in a nice air-conditioned office, a very nice canteen just round the corner. They're in air-conditioned luxury. They're sat at a computer. Who better to fill that role than a 16, 17, 18-year-old who has been brought up on computers? And I don't think we share that enough. It's a point that I've made so many times that I'm starting to bore myself. But when you look at the way that the armed forces advertise their recruitment, it's not just a case of join the army, we'll give you a gun and you can go and shoot some foreigners. It talks about the fact that you will be repairing helicopters and repairing ships and all of the other skills that go with it. Demolition and construction is exactly the same. I don't know the percentage, but if you think a demolition company that employs 100 people, there's probably 30 of those that don't even own a hard hat. And I don't think we shout loudly enough about that, and it is something we need to address. Thanks, Leanne, and I apologise for the horror show that are my eyes. I should probably start doing this in the evening. The face kind of gives a little bit as the day goes on. What we got here from Nigel? I think we need the government to make construction more of an exciting opportunity. I think you're right. But I also wonder whether it is just the government. Who understands construction best? It's people in construction, and unfortunately, I think it's one of those things. It's always done in isolation. So you'll get the likes of Balfour Beatty hosting an open day at one of their sites, and then you'll get the likes of BAM hosting an open day at one of their sites, and maybe you'll get a guided tour of a demolition site. In the same way that we have a curriculum for training, so the training of apprentices and the training of various skill sets within construction and demolition, why do we not have a national curriculum of how to deal with schools and people within schools and colleges and universities? So we've got a consistent outreach program. And I understand the fact that, when I've just mentioned Balfour Beatty and BAM and people like that, they are obviously looking to recruit themselves. But if you think about the rate with which people move around the demolition and construction industry, a Balfour Beatty employee today could well be a BAM employee tomorrow and a Kia employee the week after that. we need a unified approach, and I know I'm starting to sound like a PR man. I was for a little while, and I apologise, but it's very, very clear to me, and I think it's very, very clear to just about everybody within the industry, that the current system of recruitment and the current system of training is not satisfying our needs. And I think it's obviously been exacerbated by the fact that we probably lost, well, we certainly lost some employees through Brexit. We probably lost some more through the pandemic, where people were concerned about job security and may have gone into other sectors. And then we've got this massive bounce back with huge amounts of construction demand, and all of a sudden we haven't got enough bums to put on the various seats in machine cabs or HGV lorries and that kind of thing. We are missing a trick. As Peter's rightly said, the industry is the worst kept secret. There is so much. I think another thing that we're British, okay? Most of us are British. We're British, and we don't like to talk about that nasty subject, money. But if you really scratch the surface, you can earn a very, very, very good living in construction. And not only that, there is, perhaps more than any other industry that I'm aware of, there is a very, very clearly defined ladder of career opportunity. So you start at one level, you pass a competence card, you go up to the next, you pass another one, you go up to the next, you become a site manager and a contracts manager, and so on up the line, and things, you know, as somebody said earlier, you know, I think, who was it that said it earlier? Des Lynch said it earlier. You know, they're all looking for sort of the lifestyles of the rich and the famous. There's nothing to stop you having that. Okay, you're not going to be a YouTuber, you're not going to be a Premiership footballer, but you can have the Range Rover, you can have the fancy house and the overseas holidays and all the bells and whistles if you're willing to commit to an industry like construction or demolition. You've only got to look around some of these bigger demolition events. You know, you have a look around the car park, and there are Bentleys and there are Maseratis and that kind of thing, and there are plenty of Range Rovers as well. They're not borrowed for the day, they're not hired for the day as a way of showing off. These are owned. You know, these are people that have worked their way up and earned that right and that luxury. Yeah, I think you're right. Again, I think there's a perception problem. You know, one of the things that I always point out whenever I got the opportunity to talk to the kids at schools was the fact that we have, you know, if you're talking to children in the school and you're explaining construction, you can literally say, well, look around. You know, you're sat in a classroom now. Somebody built that, and the chances are, bearing in mind the sort of limited space we have here in the UK, the chances are something was demolished to make way for that in the first place. So you've got an actual living, breathing example of exactly what you're talking about. And you know, when you're sending children away, particularly the younger children, you know, the 6, 7, 8-year-olds, you can send them away and tell them, when you go home at night, have a look at your house, because chances are it's made of bricks and blocks, and a builder built that. You could be that builder. You could create something. And I mean, I still, bearing in mind I'm not hands-on. I'm just a bloke that talks a bit too much. But I've been to sites. As a prime example, I went to Meadowhall up in Sheffield, and I went to see the site being cleared and remediated. And I then went back to see it being built, and I've since been back to see it as an operating. It wasn't at one time. I think it was the biggest shopping centre in the whole of Europe. And when I drive past it now, I get a twinge of nostalgia. You know, my tiny part. In other words, I watched the old buildings come down. I watched the new ones go up, and I've been there. That gives me a twinge of pride, I guess. I don't think we're selling that enough. You're right. We do have our own influences, Lou. I mean, when you look at the likes of Peter, Nick, and lots of others as well. The only issue I would say about that, and I'm saying this more from my point of view, is the fact that you know, I'm present on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook. I do all of that. But look at me. 56 years old, and I'm way past myself by date. I don't think I'm really the sort of person that should be talking to 13, 14, 15-year-old children about the prospects of construction, because they'll look at me and it's just an old fart talking. We need more. We need younger people. You know, I mean, people like, he does check in occasionally. People like Connor the digger driver over on Instagram. You know, he's probably in his 30s. He's just bought his first house with his wife or his girlfriend. Has quite a nice lifestyle, but lives and breathes Instagram, but lives and breathes driving diggers. He's the sort of guy that we should be pinning our future hopes on, not an old fart like me. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's another point. You know, a few years ago, when I was more actively involved in demolition jobs, the big job that everyone was looking for was everyone was on the hunt for business development managers. The past 6-12 months, everybody's been looking for people to run their social media. And in absolute truth, the people that should be running their social media, go find yourself a very smart 16, 17, 18-year-old boy or girl, because they've grown up with that stuff. And yes, you may have to show them the ropes on what corporate accounts look like and what they should and shouldn't say, but these guys know that stuff inside out. Not old buggers like me. What have we got here? We need younger ambassadors. Well, Peter, we are of one mind, and they're out there. They're out there. You know, when I mentioned yesterday, it was Katie Kelleher's birthday yesterday. As a young woman, I'm not going to guess at her age, but she's still young. You know, most of the time she's got bright pink hair. Who better to go and sit down with a bunch of children, particularly young girls, and say, you know, I drive a crane for a living, but because of my social media presence, I've had lunch at Buckingham Palace. And I've travelled the world, and she has. You know, Nick will back me up on this. She was there at the last Baumer as a guest of Liebherr. Had a fantastic time, and she was sat there with a phone in her hand most of the time, because a key part of her job is shouting about what she's up to on social media. That's another message that we need to tell people. We had another message in from Leanne, who this time doesn't mention my glasses, which is good to know. I didn't realise you were in New Zealand, Leanne, so good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, not entirely sure which one it is. The annoying thing is, here in the UK, we do have plenty of apprenticeships, but it's getting the people to take it on board. I know the National Demolition Training Group here in the UK. You know, they have apprenticeships, and you know, they're not always full, and they are literally down to the last minute trying to get bums on seats. Crazy. Yeah, absolutely, Peter. And despite what I've said about the fact that I'm an old fart, Nick Drew is an old fart, and you're a soon-to-be old fart, maybe it is for us to take the lead. You know, we do have our presence on social media, which is, let's face it, where most of these young people are likely to be hanging out. Maybe we need to put in some sort of concerted effort. I do regularly post and tweet about diggers and dozers and trucks and all the other stuff that goes with it. Maybe we should be doing more. I know we did our dedicated skill show as a construction collective a while back, but off the top of my head, that must be best part of a year ago. Maybe it's time to revisit that, particularly as we're in the run-up to, well, I mean, it's August now. There will be school leavers aplenty, looking for new jobs in the very near future. I mean, the school term has already closed. And maybe, you know, maybe we could be influencing people now on what careers to pursue at college and university while they're making the decision. Okay. Hey, listen, time flies. I don't know what day of the bloody week it is half the time. You're absolutely right. You do have to be thick-skinned. But I think increasingly, and I'm certainly conscious of this, and I know Peter's done a lot of this, and I know Nick's done a lot of it as well. I think that tide is starting to turn, and I'm sure there are women out there on Instagram and YouTube that will tell me otherwise. But in the past, I've seen sort of sexist comments and sexist abuse aimed at women in construction, and by and large, it was allowed to happen. I think over the last 6 months or so, the number of times I've seen that it's still happening, but they're called out. I've called them out, Peter's called them out, other people have called them out, and I think the more that happens, the less that's going to be the case. But hey, if we've got to support women in construction to help plug the skills gap, yeah, let's support them. I'm in. You know, I'll sit here with a pink ribbon on my t-shirt. You know, frankly, I'd rather spend my time in the company of women than I would in the company of men, particularly those on site. And you've only got to look at the Japanese experience. You know, you look at the Premier League equipment operators, and I'm talking high-reach excavators and massive mining dump trucks. They're women. And those machines are meticulously cared for, but they are driven with the utmost care. And to dismiss 51% of the UK population because they happen to own a bra, mental, absolutely mental. I think Lou's now throwing out other people. I don't actually know Lloyd Peckham. I don't think I know Lloyd Peckham anyway. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Katie is a great example, and she, in fairness to Katie, I mean, she spends an awful lot of her time advocating for apprenticeships. But unfortunately, she's not given enough of a platform, or I mean, ultimately, she's got a full-time job. So, and I think that's one of the other issues. You know, this is one of those things that we all tend to address between times. Like now, you know, I've done a morning show, and really and truly, I could have dedicated the entire show to this very subject. It's kind of you to say, Leanne, but as I say, I mean, I know what I was like, you know, when I was 15 or 16. I mean, even my own parents, as far as I was concerned, they were talking, what's the term, bollocks. So I don't think as a 15 or 16-year-old boy or girl now, I would take a great deal of notice from somebody that looks like that. But that's not to say that I wouldn't do it, and maybe that's something we need to do. Absolutely, Nick. Listen, you know, I think we have the wind in our sails. We have a big audience. Just for those that aren't aware, between myself, Peter and Nick, we are able to reach through Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and YouTube and all those things. We are reaching somewhere close to 700,000 people around the world. We have got a massive audience, massive. And we've got, in actual fact, I mean, with one possibly notable exception in the States, we've got a bigger audience than anybody in this business. And yes, obviously we want to leverage that audience to help pay the bills. We wouldn't be here otherwise. But if we can leverage that audience to help plug the skills gap, to help support women in construction, to help interest young people in construction and demolition, count me in. I'm there all day. Let's face it, I wouldn't say I'm a part-time worker, but by the time 11 o'clock rolls around, I'm planning the next show. I have time on my hands. I know Nick is very busy, I know Peter's very busy, but I'm fairly sure we can do something together to start to make things happen. And as I said, you know, the system that we've got at the moment clearly isn't doing the job, so maybe it comes down to the likes of us. Well, Leanne, I'm going to have that printed and hung on my wall. I'm not an old fart. There are many people that would disagree with that, but yeah, thank you. Okay, thanks for the clarification, Nick. Bearded excavation is Lloyd Peckham. I am aware of bearded excavation. I didn't know the name Lloyd Peckham, so thank you for that. Let's have a look. And I think that's an important thing and I think that's one of the things. Nick will tell you this. Nick will tell you this way better than I would. Nick would spend time on site as a child, literally a child, with his dad, because his dad was a digger driver. So from a very early age, Nick got to spend Saturdays or summer holidays on site, getting the feel for diggers and for not necessarily driving them all the time, although that did come. And if you listen to his podcast on Dirt Talk with Aaron Witt at BuildWit, he explains all of that. But I think it's an exposure thing, and we've moved so far now down the health and safety route, where all demolition and construction takes place in closely guarded secrecy. And we have these huge hoardings around the site so that people can't get in. And I understand that. I do understand that. We have security manning the site so that people can't get on the site. I understand that. I back all of that wholeheartedly. But as a result of that, people, and specifically young people, aren't able, as I did as a kid, aren't able to sit there and watch a digger do its thing. You know, I remember as a kid, and this is way, I mean, I never intended to write about demolition and construction as a kid. I never intended to write as a kid. But I remember there was an old hospital close to where I lived, and it was an old RB crawler crane and wrecking ball that took it down, which goes to show how old I really am. And me and my friends would literally sit there for hours and watch this thing work. Now, whether that was logged away in the dark recesses of what I laughingly call a brain, and then came to the fore when I finally decided to pursue a career, I doubt it. I very much doubt it. But we've lost that. We've, you know, that ability, and even, I mean, we've got Lou is still here. You know, we've got a situation with exhibitions like Plantworks. Now, Plantworks has been very, very forward thinking in that it opens its doors to groups of young children, or relatively young children, on one day of the show, which is fantastic. And I know back in my old SED days, children were basically prohibited. What a crazy situation. You know, we've got a whole generation of people. You imagine if you were you know, if I was 14 years old and somebody said to me, do you fancy a day out going and looking at diggers? You're damn right I do. You know, either that or sitting there learning about geography. Sod that, I'm going to look at the diggers. We've lost that. We absolutely have lost that, and we need to do more. Yeah, Lou, the door is open. Maybe I was mentioning earlier this idea of some sort of hangout. Yes, but let's make it a focused hangout rather than just sitting there babbling on, which is, I do sense, is exactly what I'm doing now. Maybe that should be it. Maybe we should just open the doors on Facebook, because that's where we've got the biggest audience, and just chat this through amongst ourselves and see what we can do. Absolutely right, Peter. It's that. Do you know that's part of the story that gets lost, I think. I post 3 times a day, sometimes 4 times a day, over on Instagram. Now, I get paid to do some of that. I don't get paid to do all of it. But if anyone would like to send me some money, I'm open to offers. But I do that 7 days a week, 3 times a day, without fail. Nick does largely the same, and other people of that type do exactly the same thing. We are promoting the industry. But my feed, and I will put my hand up, my feed on Instagram is driven by the need to get views. And I know for a fact that diggers get the biggest number of views. I know for a fact that Caterpillar and Volvo and Komatsu diggers get the biggest number of views on diggers. So, you know, my feed is skewed towards that. And yet I've got 141,000 people watching that. Now, I don't know, I mean, the age demographic on there is, not surprisingly, it's quite young, because Instagram is quite a young platform. But maybe, just maybe, one of those posts per day should be dedicated to promoting the industry and flagging up the opportunities that exist here in this sector. We shall see. We shall see. Primary engineer, yeah. Lou, I can't remember the lady's name. I'm, as I said, brain is addled by years of alcohol abuse, but there is a company called Primary Engineer, and I know they've worked very closely with the CEA and the Plantworks in the past. And what Primary Engineer do is literally take the engineering message to primary schools. What a fantastic initiative, and it really has been. Thank you, Lou. Susan Skurlock, yeah, I've met Susan a couple of times, and they do a fantastic job. And she is a fantastic ambassador. But Primary Engineer, as the name suggests, is engineering as a whole. You know, where is construction and demolition, Susan Skurlock? I don't know. Yeah. I personally think I've always had a bit of an issue with this idea that we should be likening driving an excavator to driving a PlayStation or an Xbox. I think that's probably overly simplistic. But if I would guess if I'm a 10, 11, 12-year-old, the sexiest part of demolition and construction is unquestionably the diggers. It's not the muddy sites, it's not the pouring rain, it's probably not even the Range Rover that you might get to drive should you be successful. It is the diggers and the opportunity to get up close and personal with, let's face it, Tonka toys, very, very big Tonka toys. We need to be doing more, and you know, I do think, you know, some of the manufacturers, I know that, because I know them pretty well, I know that JCB do a lot for sort of local schools and that kind of thing, but again, it's all in silos. You know, JCB do their bit there and Komatsu do their bit somewhere else. We need a more concerted approach, and the more I think about it, the more I think that social media is the route, and maybe it falls to the likes of the people that are tuned in right now. Lou, I could do a show on the shortcomings of SED alone. I was very sad to see Contract Journal, the magazine, fold. I was even more sad to see Plant Managers Journal, the magazine, fold, because I worked on both of them. But I was saddest of all to see SED be allowed to die. Yes, it died at a time when the industry was on its uppers, and you know, I understand the financial reasoning about it. But when you look at the way that Hillhead and more recently Intermat and Bauma and Conexpo have rolled with the punches of the pandemic and various other bits and pieces, I genuinely, to this day, you know, when I don't go back to Hatfield days. I started at Contract Journal in Whipsnade days, so I did Whipsnade and Milton Keynes and the name of the racetrack, which has completely escaped me, and SED was an absolute highlight of the construction equipment industry's year. And I think one of the things that hurt me the most was the fact that a lot of magazines, and there is one I can think of right now that claims to be championing the industry, they're not. That's not what they're there for. They're there to earn money through advertising and exhibitions and events. That's not championing. Championing means that you commit and you take the rough with the smooth. And there is no question SED was going through a very, very rough patch, but it would have come back. As we've seen, you know, Plantworks has filled that void, and Plantworks likewise has had to ride the punches of Hillhead moving and Bauma moving and pandemics not allowing the show to take place. But it will come back, and I, you know, above everything else, I would so like the industry to welcome back, when Plantworks finally rolls around, to welcome it back with open arms, and don't just go on your own and have a look around for an hour. Fill your bloody car, take 5 or 6 of your mates, take your kids, take everybody that you know, show them what this industry has got to offer, show them what Plantworks has got to offer, because it's only when we start to do things like that that we actually start to make a difference, you know. You're absolutely right, Peter, as you always are. Again, you know, that are we also missing a trick with it's something that you and I have touched on, Peter, and Nick as well. You know, these back in the day, and I do go back quite a long way, we used to have these CMPE, contractors mechanical plant shows. So there was one up at Haydock Racecourse. There was 2 or 3, and there was one up in Scotland as well. I think there were 2 or 3, possibly even 4 a year. And you know, they were vaguely public events, you know, another fantastic opportunity to show young people what a digger looks like up close. Get them sat in the cab. Okay, they're not going to be driving it, but get them sat in the cab and show them that the average machine cab, particularly when you're talking about modern plant, is way better, regardless of what car their dad drives or their mother drives. The cab of that machine is better, it's bigger, it's got more bells and whistles, it's got more technology, it's got everything. You know, I mean, there are times, you know, when you watch. I was in a Liebherr dump truck, an ADT, a couple of weeks ago, and I was genuinely envious of the guy that was driving it. You know, I'm pretty sure that after 8-9 hours a day, 5 days, 6 days a week, and after about 6 months, I would probably, you know, the novelty would have worn off. But what a fantastic environment, particularly for an unsociable sod like me. That would have been a perfect working environment. You know, we need to be showing children that. You know, put the machines on display, have ladders up to, or stairs up to the cab, so they can get in and get the feel for what it looks like, and just the sheer scale and the amount of technology that's poured into that. We are missing a trick. Absolutely, and I do think, I mean, maybe that's a discussion, Lou, if you're still here, maybe this is a discussion that we need to be having about Plantworks and about other events as well. Plantworks, like all exhibitions, has a tendency to take place in a bubble. So if you're there, you're there. If you're not, you're not. And yes, we can all take our photographs of the fancy new machines and post them on our Instagram feeds. But we should be doing something else, you know. And we've got the capability. I'm sat here in a box room chatting to an audience. We should be doing that. We should be broadcasting Plantworks live, literally out and about. And I'm not talking about talking heads, not me interviewing somebody, not Peter interviewing somebody, not Nick interviewing somebody, but out and about. Here's diggers in operation. Here's stuff actually doing what it does. That's what we need to be doing, I think. There you are. There is an event coming up in March. Well, March can't roll around quite soon enough for my liking, but Lou, as you well know, you can count me and Peter and Nick in. Frankly, I don't care what it looks like. If we're setting aside the business of selling machines, and you know, let's just park that. Let's just accept that the equipment manufacturers that support that event in March will take care of that element of things. They will take care of getting their customers along. They will take care of getting their dealers along, and they will take care of doing business. Our job, and I mean the global us, so Nick, Peter, Lou, Nigel, all the people that are watching this, our job should be taking that message to the biggest possible audience we can and the youngest possible audience we can. And I have to think that social media is the way to go on that. Can you believe I've been talking for nearly an hour? It's just as well I haven't got a proper job, isn't it? But yeah, we as Lou, no thanks necessary. We should be thanking you. We need an opportunity to go and blow off the cobwebs. So yeah. Technology driven, yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, there's another example. And I know I covered it, I know Nick covered it, and I know Peter covered it. There was a fantastic, if you didn't get to Plantworks last time around, which seems like a lifetime ago, there was a simulation zone. So there was a bunch of, I think it was probably about half a dozen simulators. Surely that is the best way to show a young person what this is all about. You know, to sit them in a seat where they can't come to any harm, nobody else can come to any harm, but they can get the feel for what it's like to be behind the controls of a dozer, an excavator, a wheel loader. That sim zone is draw enough, I would say, attraction enough. You know, treat it like a theme park for a day. You know, even extend the bloody show for a day and just give it over to children. And you know, I'm absolutely sure, particularly when you look at the likes of, I mean, a lot of that was down to Plantforce. Plantforce do some fantastic work with colleges, as Peter has reported in the past. I think Nick's reported as well. You know, if we could find the space, and if we could ask them politely to extend it by a day, and just dedicate an entire day to just the simulation zone, close everything else, simulation zone, and open it to every school and college that is able to get there, that would make such a huge statement. I can see that Peter has posted a link in the chat there. I'm guessing that's probably a link to his look at the simulation, but I don't know because I can't click it from where I am. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, have a look at that. It really is a fantastic video. And again, I mean, Peter, because Peter is very much of the industry, that was done for the industry. You know, maybe next time around we need to do it. Hey, this is all coming to me as Lucas Haddock needs to spend a day at the simulation zone. By that time, I reckon he'll be probably 14. put Lucas in front of the camera, put Lucas in the seat of the simulator, and let him tell his fellow teenagers what it's all about. And Peter, Nick, me, we will all be over in the coffee area talking about our aches and pains like old farts do. There you are. There's my grand idea for the day, and Lucas will be there. I look forward to meeting him at last. He's been on the show a couple of times, the Construction Collective show a few times. I look forward to meeting him in person at some point in the very near future. I agree. Having said that, I have been involved, as you well know, Peter, I've been involved in the Digger Challenge with Mr. Drew. And not only did he beat me while he was allowing me to win. I'm very, very aware of my shortcomings as a machine operator, but never more so than on a day when a man who is allowing you to win still beats you. But that's enough for the day. We are very, very dangerously close to an hour mark. Unfortunately, all of this good stuff, I'll keep it, but all of this good stuff is going to end up on the cutting room floor because the show goes out as about a 15 to 20 minute piece. But what I will do, given the fact that this is of value and a discussion point, I will chop this bit off. I'll put it up as a video, but I'll link it separately so that you can all go back and look at it. I'll share it as well. And if anybody else wants to get in touch about outreach to young people, outreach to schools, colleges, universities. If you want to know where to get a copy of My Dad Drives a Digger or My Dad Does Demolition, I can point you in the right direction for that. Let's keep talking about this, because I do think we have the basis of some good ideas here, people. But just before the hour comes up, I'm going to sign off and let you all get on with the day job. I do apologise for taking up so much of your morning or evening if you're in New Zealand. But that will do us for today. Really appreciate you being here, and I need a cup of tea. So have a great day, everyone, and take care of yourselves.